Destruction layers. Excavations have uncovered destruction layers in many Israelite cities, including Samaria and Megiddo, that can be dated to the late 8th century BCE, the period of the Assyrian campaigns. Changes in settlement patterns. After the conquest, the urban landscape of Israel changed dramatically, with the Assyrian provincial administration replacing the Israelite monarchy. This included a decline in settlement in some areas and the establishment of new administrative centers in others. Assyrian artifacts, archaeological finds, such as cuneiform tablets and Assyrian-style pottery, confirm the Assyrian presence and administration in the former Israelite territory. This event was a major catalyst for the Israelite diaspora and led to the exile of many of its inhabitants. Here is a breakdown of what happened: the Assyrian invasion and conquest. Political background. For years, the northern kingdom of Israel had been a vassal state to the Neo-Assyrian Empire, which was rapidly expanding its control across the Middle East. Failed rebellion. The Israelite king Hoshea stopped paying tribute to the Assyrians and sought an alliance with Egypt, a rival power. This act of defiance prompted a swift and aggressive response from the Assyrian king. Shalmaneser v. Siege of Samaria. The Assyrians invaded and besieged Samaria, the Israelite capital. After a 3-year siege, the city fell in 722 BCE, the Israelite deportations and exile. Assyrian policy. The Assyrian Empire had a systematic policy of mass deportation to prevent rebellions and to assimilate conquered peoples. By mixing populations and destroying local leadership, Assyria was able to maintain control. Forced relocation. After the fall of Samaria, the Assyrians forcibly relocated many Israelites to distant parts of their empire, including to Hala, Gozan, and the cities of Media. Assyrian records from the time claim the deportation of over 27,000 Israelites. A resettlement of foreigners. In turn, the Assyrians brought people from other conquered lands and resettled them in the former territory of Israel. The aftermath. The 10 lost tribes. The exiled Israelites from the northern kingdom were scattered across the Assyrian Empire and largely assimilated into the new culture. They became known in tradition as the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Formation of the Samaritans. The population that remained in the land of Israel, a mix of the remaining Israelites and the newly resettled foreign peoples, eventually formed a new mixed culture. Their descendants later became known as the Samaritans. The southern kingdom of Judah. Following the fall of its northern neighbor, the kingdom of Judah remained independent for about another century, though it was still subject to Assyrian influence and pressure. The events of 722 BCE served as a dire warning of the consequences of defying imperial rule. This period was defined by a volatile power dynamic between Roman authority and Semitic Judean Israelites' aspirations for independence, fueling constant unrest and 2 massive revolts. Economic exploitation. The Roman administration imposed heavy taxes and tributes, which were a major source of resentment among the Jewish population. Religious and cultural conflict. The monotheistic Jewish faith frequently clashed with Roman paganism and imperial decrees. Roman actions, such as placing Roman standards in Jerusalem and demanding imperial worship, often provoked outrage. Transformation of Judaism. The destruction of the Second Temple fundamentally changed Jewish religious practice. With the temple's sacrificial cult no longer possible, Rabbinic Judaism emerged, centered on Torah study and the synagogue. Rise of Christianity. The Roman occupation of Judea and the rule of Pontius Pilate were the backdrop for the life and crucifixion of Jesus, as well as the early spread of Christianity. Dispersal of the Jewish population. The Roman conquests and suppressions of revolts led to a significant and often forced dispersal of the Jewish population, expanding the Jewish diaspora. The Romans invaded Judea not with a single decisive action, but through a long process driven by imperial ambition, economic interests, and a cycle of exploitation and rebellion. Roman military campaigns and eventual direct rule were often triggered by internal Jewish conflicts and a series of bloody revolts. Initial intervention, 63 BCE. Roman General Pompey the Great first intervened in Judea following the collapse of the Hellenistic Seleucid Empire, which created a power vacuum in the region. Civil War. 2 brothers, Hyrcanus II and Aristobulus II, engaged in a civil war for control of the Hasmonean throne. Both invited Roman support to bolster their claim. Pompey's opportunism. Pompey took advantage of the internal conflict to assert Roman dominance over the region. In 63 BCE, he marched on Jerusalem, besieged and captured the city, and made Judea a Roman client kingdom. Expansionist strategy. This move was part of a larger Roman strategy to secure control of the eastern Mediterranean and create a buffer against the rival Parthian Empire. Judea's location served as a key trade conduit between Asia Minor, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. Intensified occupation and exploitation, 6 to 66 CE. Over the next century, simmering tensions between the Roman administration and the Jewish population fueled a series of uprisings. Direct rule. After the death of client King Herod the Great in 4 BCE, Judea became a Roman province in 6 CE, ruled directly by Roman governors known as procurators. Religious and cultural clashes. The monotheistic Jewish faith clashed sharply with Roman paganism and the imperial cult, where emperors were worshipped as gods. Governor Pontius Pilate and Emperor Caligula both provoked outrage by violating Jewish religious sensibilities. A Roman corruption. Several Roman procurators exploited their positions for personal gain, imposing heavy taxes and engaging in theft and brutality. The abuses of Governor Gessius Florus in 66 CE were a direct trigger for the First Jewish to Roman War. Jewish society was also divided, with various factions holding different views on Roman rule. These divisions contributed to internal conflicts and prevented a united front against Rome. Suppression of the Jewish revolts 66 to 136 CE. The ultimate invasions were a Roman response to large-scale, organized Jewish rebellions. The First Jewish to Roman War 66 to 73 CE. This major rebellion was spurred by escalating tensions and Roman corruption. The Romans were determined to crush the uprising. It resulted in the destruction of Jerusalem and the Second Temple in 70 CE and the mass enslavement or killing of many Jewish inhabitants. The Bar Kokhba Revolt 132 to 136 CE. This was the final major Jewish rebellion. It was triggered by Emperor Hadrian's decision to establish a pagan Roman city, Aelia Capitolina, over the ruins of Jerusalem and potentially by a ban on circumcision. The Roman response was even more brutal than the First War, leading to the near depopulation of Judea and further dispersal of the Jewish population. Forced diaspora. Enslaved West Semitic Indo-Africans were forbidden from practicing their native religions and were forced to convert to Catholicism by their French, Spanish, and Portuguese captors. Syncretism in the Americas. To maintain their traditions, enslaved people merged their beliefs with Catholic practices. They found parallels between the Catholic saints and their own LWA, and used these symbols to secretly continue their spiritual practices. Haitian Vodou, in Haiti. Vodun combined with Catholicism to create a new distinct religion known as Vodou. It became a source of community, resistance, and strength for enslaved people, famously playing a role in the Haitian Revolution. A New Orleans Voodoo, in Louisiana. Voodoo developed as a blend of West African folk traditions, Haitian Vodou, brought by refugees, and Spanish, French, and Native American practices. Origins of spell magic. The practice of using spoken words, rituals, or objects to influence events is a universal human concept, with roots in nearly every ancient culture. Ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, in these civilizations, magic and religion were not separate concepts. Priests and exorcists used spells and rituals to combat demons, heal the sick, and guide the deceased. The Egyptian Book of the Dead contained spells intended to aid the soul in the afterlife. A classical Greece and Rome. Greeks and Romans used charms, spells, and incantations to petition gods, bind enemies, or ensure a desired outcome, such as success in love or competition. However, their cultures also developed a distinction between socially accepted religious rites and illicit magic. European folklore and witchcraft. Throughout medieval and early modern Europe, folk magic was common and often practiced by cunning folk for healing and protection. The Christian Church and secular authorities increasingly condemned these practices as witchcraft and associated them with evil and pacts with the devil, leading to widespread witch hunts. A Renaissance humanism. During the Renaissance, there was a resurgence in interest in ancient texts and occult practices, such as Hermeticism and ceremonial magic. This helped create a more complex, book-based form of magic that was taken seriously by some intellectuals. Key differences. It is important to distinguish between voodoo as a distinct religion and the general practice of spell magic. A voodoo is a codified, ancestral religion with a specific theology, cosmology, and set of ceremonies. A spell magic is a universal concept found in many traditions, from ancient rituals to folk beliefs. It can be a part of religious practice, but is not a complete religion in itself. The demonization of voodoo and its conflation with black magic were part of a racist and colonial agenda to suppress West African spiritual traditions. The so-called voodoo doll is a misconception, as authentic voodoo dolls are not used for curses in the way they are depicted in Hollywood. A shaman is a spiritual and ceremonial practitioner who serves as an intermediary between worlds. Spiritual element meant that medicine treated the entire person, mind, body, and spirit, addressing the perceived root cause of the ailment rather than just the physical symptoms. Semitic bloodline practices, pre-Islamic, and Christendom practices are labeled shamanic, linking to the legend of the biblical son of Noah, Shem. Or knowledge of Shem legend is performed in shaman's craft found in various indigenous and tribal cultures throughout history and across the globe, including in parts of Asia, the Americas, Africa, and Australia. Medicine man is a historical calque, or loan translation, that originated from European colonists' attempts to define shamanism. Healers, often called shamans or medicine people, were believed to communicate with the spirit world. Their methods for healing included rituals, prayers, chanting, and the use of talismans to ward off evil spirits thought to cause illness. King James of Scotland. Later James I of England. The Crown's role and the early trade. 1618, King James I granted a patent to the Guinea Company, giving them permission to trade for gold and other goods in West Africa. This company was a predecessor to the later, and far more infamous, Royal African Company. 1619, the first recorded enslaved Africans were brought to Virginia. English privateers attacked a Portuguese